Hello everyone! Welcome back to another build time lapse. It is officially autumn, which means it's time for us to work on our autumn fairy. I am super happy with how she turned out and I can't wait to show you the process. Let's get into it. So to start off, we have a simple island created out of stone and we're going to be using some voxel spheres to just mark in roughly where our tree is going to go. I smooth it out a little bit, and then now that it's marked in, I can move on to the next section of the build so I can get a good feel for how the layout is going to go. For this, I start with the curve command, marking in a simple boat. The boat is meant to resemble a leaf that has fallen out of the tree and that our fairy is currently paddling around in. I think the effect turned out nicely, and if you're curious, right now I'm filling in the leaf with the spline command. Click the little eye in the corner for some tutorials throughout this build process. I promise I have a tutorial on every single command that I've used. Now we're going to move on to the body. It's fairly difficult to get a body positioned in this canoe because it's kind of a difficult position. She's got to be in motion paddling the canoe. Her legs have to be providing stability. I don't think I quite nailed it, but I'm on the right track. Now we move back to the tree where we're using the curve command to create more branches, starting with a larger radius and then slowly working down into smaller twigs. Because our tree is hitting world height, it's a little bit awkward, but I managed to make it work. Now we add the head back to our fairy and use a line of gold to position the arms properly on the paddle. This line definitely helped to guide me quite a lot, and once I'm happy with it, I move her back into the little leaf canoe that we've got down here. It was difficult to get her positioned, but I eventually get it correct. Now we can move on to the coloring, where I create the colors for the island and then put some blue layered glass to make the water look deep. Now we want our tree to look like it is integrated into the terrain, so of course we need some nice, smooth, and curly roots going into the terrain. I've never been big on doing massive roots, so my roots are always a little bit tinier, but it's just personal preference. Now it's time to color the tree, where we go for lighter browns on the top where the sun would be hitting, and on the underside a little darker. Then we could fill in the whole thing with some spruce logs. I use the spruce logs because it's going to provide a lot of contrast against our very bright autumn leaves. And speaking of those, we're setting up our colors now, going from our darkest oranges to medium-toned yellows. I create 6 different leaves, 3 that are orange and 3 that are yellow. I then create 2 different scatter brushes for these leaves, place the orange ones and yellow ones together. I use the orange on the bottom, underside of the tree, and the yellow on top. It creates sort of a nice gradient effect, and I really like the way that it turned out. Now it's time to turn our attention back to our fairy, because let's be real, she needs a lot of work right now. I first add on some feet, and then move the paddle, thicken up the line, and add the end of the paddle. I found it rather difficult to position this paddle correctly, and I think I probably should have went with more of a twig design to make it look like it also fell out of the tree. Oh well, I'll make that improvement the next time. Now it's time to move over to our hands. The hands were fairly simple because they're just wrapping around the paddle. Then we can move on to some colors, after fixing up the feet a little bit more. I lay out the colors that I might want to use in her dress so that I don't forget any. And then I mark in her skin, change the color of the paddle, and change the color of our leaf canoe. Once that's done, I mark in her boots, her shirt, and some shorts to go on and under her skirt. I want her clothing to look a little bit warmer than our summer and spring fairies. Now we move on to her wings, where I go for some butterfly-like wings. I'm really proud of how these turned out, and I definitely think they suit the atmosphere quite well. Once the wings are done, we can do a little bit more refining to her clothing. I'm using the spline command, same as we did with the leaf, but now for her skirt. Get a little bit more of a thicker skirt, and I'm using some mushroom blocks to color it. I think the mushroom block colors look fantastic and fit with the fall theme so well. She looks so cozy sitting in her little leaf boat. I add some flowers to detail that, and then add some more detail to her shirt and start on her hair. She has long, black, straight hair, and I just absolutely love putting in the hair. I think it brings the entire look together. I don't have it blowing in the wind too much, just a few little wisps of hair out of place some places, but there's not very much wind in this scene, so I didn't need it to be going too crazy. Once the hair is done, it's time to texture our leaf canoe. For this, I'm using some lighter colors around the edge, then creating some vein-like leaf textures with some gray terracotta. Now we can move over to our final details, moving onto the island where we're going to be creating a little pop of color with a bright red bush. Then I'm going to be using the boulder brush to create some rocks around our island. Of course, they have a little bit of green moss on them to add a pop of color. We're also going to be adding some brown strands of grass and eventually some mushrooms. And as the final touch, of course, we need some leaves falling from our autumn tree. And now the build is finished. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this process. It was seriously so much fun to create, and I think the autumn season is definitely one of my favorites. Let me know which season is your favorite and why in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember, if you have any questions about commands that I used, click the little info button up in the corner of the screen. I promise I've linked everything. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!